Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that can shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 44-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Cathy, 52-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum. And change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present. Hello, Cathy. Welcome to episode 1 of The Change. How are you?
Hi. Well,
Hi.
Yeah, I'm great. And thank you for doing this, I guess. Thank you for finally... Yeah, we're here. We're doing this and it's so exciting and I'm feeling really good about it.
Fantastic. Yes, me too. It is quite strange seeing you on screen, and here we are recording our very first episode, and but we're excited. And I think that we do need to start episode 1 by explaining how this podcast came to be, the reason why we call this podcast The Change, which is a name you came up with, by the way. So, well done you. Round of applause.
Yay.
Kick us off. Do explain.
Well, we've been thinking about a podcast for a long time, really. You know, we met at Mamma Mia, Australia's largest independent women's media group, for anyone that doesn't really know who they are. In 2021, we bonded because we were a pair of mature age interns on the Encoreship program, which was launched in 2021, and we were part of that first group of women taken in through the Encoreship program. And when we were there, we, got to chatting and we decided that we really wanted to do a podcast about that midlife and kind of feeling invisible, right?
Yes, we did. And it sort of initially felt a bit jarring, didn't it, when we turned up as like these two old girls on the editorial team? And I say old, obviously, as a joke. We weren't old. I know we're not. But it was quite, we stood out a little bit. Most of the women on that editorial team were in their 20s, but everyone was lovely and so welcoming. And it was, it was a great experience. And I really quite loved sitting next to some of the women and hearing all their chat about flat shares and boyfriends. It took me right back to a time long gone in my past. But I remember early on we had the opportunity to attend a podcast pitch meeting, which was super exciting. All the team were there, and we could see this gap for content for women like us in midlife, mums to older children, these big kids who are no longer insta cute, women in long-term relationships, or women who haven't had children, but just that post 40. And at the time, our pitch, which was called Invisible Women, didn't grow legs. But in an exciting turn of events, here we are now, both in a position to bring it to life with a slightly different spin, focusing not just on our age and stage of life and the physicality of us being invisible, I guess, but on the array of life experiences and changes that women of our age all seem to face, which is so cool.
Yeah, I think after you left Mamma Mia in October 2023, we started chatting more seriously about doing something independently. But we've been talking about it pretty much since I left Mamma Mia. We just couldn't work out how to kind of fit it into our diaries. You were busy, I was busy. And then it kind of hit me one day, the name, The Change, because it still serves that dual purpose of, well, menopause is often referred to as the change. And then the stage of life that we were kind of in, but also there's a whole lot more to it, as we talked about it and we really fleshed through the thoughts and ideas. Life is really full of change. And as women, we seem to go through quite a bit of change. I'm sure men do too, but this is really for women. And we're talking about changes that women go through a lot.
Yeah, when you told me that idea and the name, The Change, I think I pretty much jumped on Canva that very day and made a tile and said, let's just load this up to Instagram. Let's just go. We've been talking about this long enough. I really love the name, and I think, what it means from this midlife point of view, but also how change is part of life, that we cannot avoid change.
Yeah.
It is absolutely integral to living and being alive, and how it can be good and bad and scary and exciting and big and small. And there's just so many changes. And as you said, previously, just at this stage of life, it feels like they're coming at you from every angle, all the different
Yeah.
changes. And so for this season, and as that concept grew and we talked about it more and it grew from that Canva tile and that name, we decided we reached out to some incredible guests who we're going to be chatting to this season about some of the big changes they have gone through, things
Mm.
like changes in career, changes as your kids grow up and leave home,
Yep.
changes in your sexuality and your identity. And we're also going to be speaking to psychologist Tracy Williams in a later episode to explain how change can be so hard. It might be inevitable, but gosh, it is a challenge for many of us at many stages. So we kind of thought, with that in mind, that we would start episode 1 of season 1 talking about some of our most recent and significant changes and our relationship to the change. So you can go get to know us a bit. And I thought, well, Cathy, you've said, change is your kryptonite. How do you handle change generally, both big and small?
Well, and I guess it's kind of, I laugh because it really is my kryptonite. For most of the time, change, I deal with it by, rocking in a corner.
Hmm.
No, not really. Though sometimes I think that that is a really good option. And for me, I have this really tricky relationship with change because change is, as you've said, and as we've talked about, it's inevitable. We can get up in a morning and we can think it's going to go one way and we can have that all planned out, and out of nowhere comes and change happens. But for me, I don't really seem to do small incremental changes. They all seem to fly at me, big changes all at the same time, because that's kind of how I live. I'm pretty much always a bit of all or nothing. So for me, change really is my kryptonite. I struggle with it. I would say that I have a very unhealthy relationship with it at times, but I get help to deal with that as well, which I think is really important to acknowledge up front, that we don't have to do it alone. I get a lot of support to help me through change. And I struggle with change even when it's change that it's something that I want to do. And even when it's good, when I sold my house, well, not just my house, my family home with my family, and we moved to a bigger home that was more suited to our family's needs. And that was something that I'd always wanted, always dreamed about doing. But when it came down to the crunch, leaving that home that I'd brought my 3 babies home to was really, really tricky and really, really hard. I found that really hard. And that was only 3 years ago,
Mm.
I did that in the middle of COVID, literally in year 1. Well, what is that, 3.5, 4 years ago? I don't know. We're not allowed to talk about the COVID years, are we?
Oh, we will be
Um,
talking about the COVID years, don't worry.
but, recent change for me, it's there, ever present, every day. But I finished a job. I got a new job. So currently I'm getting to know the new people in my new job, new workplace. My twins, who are my babies, they've just finished their HSC,
Oh, that's
and
big. Mm.
yay for them.
Yeah.
They have a plan and they know what they want to do, and at least for next year. And that's all that, we can hope for them. And again, not talking about the C word, but I got COVID for the 3rd time just as I started the new job. I got quite sick with that. And yeah, so there's quite a bit of change around. Look, I'm hoping that it'll settle. And I say that every single time, but I'm sure there'll be something that'll come flying at me in another way.
And that's like what happens as we get older, is when you have kids as well, your
Mm,
family's bigger, you're not just dealing with your own changes, you're dealing with your kids' changes, and that's another level of difficulty. As you've already mentioned, we've had global change on such a scale. I don't want to use the unprecedented word, but I'm going to use it because it's just been it's been one thing after the other. We don't know how to deal with these things in the first instance, and then it's like, how do you deal with it on social media? How do you deal with it when
Mm,
talking to your friends about these things? How, what if we have different opinions on these, big scale events? It's been like we've all had to learn so much in the last few years that it has been a massive deal. And I think that's something we want to talk about in this season is with our guests about how they've adapted to the speed of change
mm,
globally, because that's what it's been, hasn't it? It's like,
yeah,
yes, we have changes and we're in a, in the midlife period where there's lots of personal change, but the speed of which the world has changed is just incredible and so hard to keep up with, especially when you're not young. I think
yeah.
it's difficult.
And some days you would wake up and you'd think, well, these are the rules today.
Yeah.
And then they would change halfway through
Yes.
the day. And you'd be like, okay, what do I do now? It really is, change can be hard, but
Mm.
not everybody finds change hard. So what about you, Laura? What about how do you find change?
Look, I think I hate to be stereotypical, but the older I get, the harder I'm finding it. I think
Mhm.
that when I was young, I was quite adaptable. I moved countries. I loved the change. I'm very happy in rooms full of people I don't know. In that sense, I feel quite comfortable in an ever changing environment. I was happy to chop my hair off, grow my hair, change my physical appearance, change and adapt with trends and all sorts of things, those kinds of surface level change. Yeah, but having kids, getting older, responsibilities, it's all made it a lot more challenging. And like we've already said, with global change as well, that's just added added more complexity to how I feel about it. I think, I like to see myself as adaptable, and that's how I have felt about myself as a person for many years. But, I've also gone through things perhaps that weren't to my plan.
Mhm.
I know that you too like a plan, I like a routine, and that's something that's changed as I've gotten older. I really relish knowing what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I love to plan my holidays, and that's how I feel generally about life, I think, and that's as I've gotten older, and then when things don't work out, it is hard, isn't it? And that was COVID in a massive
Mm.
way, wasn't it? For all of us, it
Yeah.
was like, "Vroom, here you go. Here's 2020." Just as you sort of getting into the year, now your year has completely changed, as has your life. So I think that taught me a lot about myself, and that, like everyone, yeah, it was hard to deal with. So yeah, like it's been my relationship with change has been it's grown, it's changed, it's developed, and the older I get, the more challenging I'm finding it. I want to ask you, Kathy, and I wanted to also say, I really appreciate you saying about getting help as well. I think that's really important that we talk about that. And I know it will come up again in season one when we talk about our own pathways to support and professional
Mhm.
help. And I think it's
Yeah.
it's so important, isn't it? So many people don't
Yeah.
reach out when they need help. So I think that's fabulous that you do that. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't in the past,
Mm,
and that kind of was probably a catalyst to massive change.
mm,
But I recognise how important it is for me now to do that, and
yeah.
it's part of it's a staple in my diet. Well, yeah, my daily life really.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. I too have certainly leaned on professional psychological help in the past to get me through big changes and big issues for me. So I think it's very important. In terms of big change, Kathy, you turned
Mhm.
50 in 2021, around the time we first met. And you wrote this incredible article that went viral for Mamma Mia about being invisible, that also, was part of this, the what has informed this whole podcast. So I just
Mm.
wanted to ask you how turning 50 made you feel, and a little bit about that whole sentiment of feeling invisible at 50.
Yeah, so 50 was tricky, because, 2021, it was COVID lockdowns, in and
Mm,
out, in and out. I was lucky enough to be able to celebrate. I snuck in a celebration, and I know many people, didn't get to do those things with their loved ones. So it it was kind of really tricky, and it's funny how it's just a number, but at the same time, it felt like a big number. It felt like a really, I don't know, like a really monumental number. bigger than any of the other birthdays that I'd had.
Yeah.
I really sort of felt that I couldn't see myself
Mm.
anywhere. Like I didn't know what my place was. It was around the time of my birthday that actually the encoreship was advertised. I think it was just like maybe the week before, or applications closed, and I wasn't going to apply because I was just like, what could I possibly bring to Mamma Mia? And I really had a lot of self doubt, had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I just didn't. As I said, I couldn't see myself anywhere. I couldn't see myself on TV. I couldn't see myself in advertising. And I certainly really felt that I had so much to give and so much to bring, but at the same time, I didn't feel like anyone cared, and
Mm.
that we were really kind of a little bit invisible. So we started at Mamma Mia, and it was fabulous. And I remember like all of the gorgeous young girls, they were literally all kind of in their own way falling over themselves to help me out with different technologies, different things, learn new experiences. And I was coming towards the end of my time. I knew that I was going to finish up with Mamma Mia. I think I just knew that I I loved it. I loved the time there, but I think I just knew that I couldn't do that on a
Mm.
daily basis. And so I pitched that article, and boy, it hit a nerve.
We'll put a
It
link in the show notes for anyone that hasn't read it as well, because obviously this might be something you would like to read if you're listening to this.
yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it certainly, gosh, it went ballistic to say the very least. But I think in general, I was, a very typical Gen X woman who was conditioned to believe that we could have it all, except that all was quite impossible to do all at the same time. If you
Mm.
wanted to be that good wife, that good mother, that good employee, that good friend, human, daughter, sister, all of those things. And the order of those things changed on any given day. And I think over time, I slipped into invisibility. I didn't know who I was. So while I couldn't see myself out there in the world, I also became a little bit invisible to myself.
Mm.
Yeah, it was really difficult. Anyway, I pitched it, and it went kind of crazy,
Mm.
and there was something that happened at a moment when I was in a shop, in a surf shop locally, and I was standing at the counter waiting to be served. Like, I literally had the things in my hand, and the shop assistant looked past me and went to the young person behind me and served them. That was a really aha moment, because I'm just like an ordinary person.
Mm. And so now I'm in that same phase with you where I'm starting to feel that. I'm starting to feel invisible. And, I can't believe, just looking back, things like 2016 is like 8 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, that does not
Mhm.
feel that long ago. And yet it is. And, I'm working with people who were born in like 2003. How is that possible? I was married in 2003. It's just, there's been, I feel at this age, you've gone through so much. And I also feel at this age and stage of life that we are way more interesting than we were when we were in our early 20s. No disrespect to anyone in their early 20s, but you've done some things, and it's not fair that we are overlooked and often have this sense of invisibility, because we shouldn't be. We should be hyper visible. And I wondered, what was it about the invisibility that was most difficult for you? Was it sort of physical appearance, or was it the fact you'd kind of disappeared into caring or worrying about other people? What was it that gave you that real sense of being invisible?
It was less about physical appearance, because I mean, yeah, well, like everybody, I worry about getting older, and I,
Mm.
dye my hair and all of those things. But it was less about that and more about the fact that I'd actually just disappeared into caring and worrying about everybody else.
Mm.
So I had just disappeared out of life, if that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of
Mm,
it's a bit hard to explain, but I guess I wasn't showing up for myself.
mm,
So I was invisible in my own world.
mm,
I just felt like there wasn't a place for me. So it was less about my physical appearance and more about all of those other things that come with it. And as you say, I mean, I think about how, 1988 is when I finished high school. Like
mm.
that's when I did my HSC. And I heard someone on the radio say the other day that 1987 was 35 years ago. And I was like, no, no, it wasn't. It was just like 10.
Yes,
Surely it was just
surely.
10 years ago. But no,
No.
apparently not.
Mm,
When you get the calculator out and you do the math. And so I kind of, it's like all of those years, where was I in all of those years?
mm,
And I also raised children at a time where there was no social media.
mm.
Like in my lifetime, so many things have happened. We've had the internet. I know I sound 1,000 years old, and I'm really not. But we've had the internet. We've had social media. Like I've been on Facebook since 2007 when Facebook kind of was released out
You're
into the wider
relatively new.
world.
Mm.
With all of the social media and all of that changing landscape, I saw myself less and less and less, and I just disappeared more and more and more. And yeah, just found myself disappearing out, I guess, which is hard and scary. So, you, Laura, talking about change and things, you stayed on at Mamma Mia when I finished up,
Mhm.
but you've just finished up just a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
in October after 2.5 years. I know that that has been a huge change for you, and I know we've talked about that a lot. So, how about you tell others about how that was for you and yeah, how you went through that?
Yeah, that has been a big change. I think that leaving work, that my dream job was actually really hard. I back in 2022, I wrote a story about starting my media career in my 40s, and I'll pop a little link in the show notes to that one too. And I meant every word of it. How excited I was, maybe a little naive, but I was really positive about this new start at 41 or whatever it was, and then the time passed on, and obviously the closer I got, like I've said before, to my mid-40s, the more tired I became, the harder that long commute to Sydney became, the younger my very lovely colleagues seemed, and I just wasn't feeling that same kind of sense of positivity that I had. And it was so disappointing, and it was like I had crushed my own dream, and I obviously left in October of this in 2023, and the juggle with family as well was really difficult,
Yeah.
and I just constantly felt like I wasn't doing a good job of any of it, work or home, and I was never present with the kids and digital media as well. It's a very intense environment,
Mm.
and I had a lot of anxiety. I was seeing a psychologist to help me through that, and I think, I was living for the weekend and holidays, and it just didn't
Mm.
feel right, and the fun of that initial dream job had sort of left, and I don't know whether that was to do with the stress of the job itself. Was it perimenopause? That was all kind of heaped into the
Yeah.
same. I was starting to get some of those symptoms, and, we can talk more about that in a moment, but I think, it's the leaving of the job, my dream job, has been a lot harder than I thought. I thought I'd leave and feel some sense of relief at the at that, but I haven't in many ways. I have
Mm.
found it very disappointing. It sort of hurt my pride, I guess, that I had this
Mhm.
dream job and then I left my dream job and everyone's like, "Why did you leave?" And I think I was so caught up in it. It was became part of my personality. This was my
Mhm.
dream job, and here I am in it. And isn't it amazing? And look at me doing these amazing things, even though I'm in my 40s. And you can do it too. And that was the kind
And
of
it was
yeah,
amazing, and
yeah.
you are amazing, and
Thanks,
you
Kathy.
definitely were when you were there, and you
Mm.
were and are amazing, so don't ever question that.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that's been part of the fact that I've left, and I have to go. Well, that experience. It doesn't mean that it doesn't count, even though it is now in my past. I still actually, yes, I did those things. And now it's just about dealing with who I am now after that dream job sort of didn't end as well, it ended more quickly than I had hoped. And now it's about looking to who I am now and who I will become. So I guess that has definitely been harder than I thought. Yeah. And like I said, chucking on top those other, you know, with leading into my mid 40s and some of those perimenopause symptoms like gross night sweats. I've definitely had some up and down moods, get so angry, so
Mm.
unjustifiably angry at all sorts of things.
Mhm.
Brain fog, forgetting people's names, just feeling a bit weirdy in that sense, anxiety. And I've read a lot about women in their 40s who suddenly feel like they're going mad. They have to quit their job, or they're saying, I can't deal with the stress that I've dealt with for years. And I do wonder how much of it was the stress of the job, but it was also perimenopause. It was kind of linked together at this
Mm.
time, this kind of cataclysmic time in my life where, I had to make a change anyway. And I left, and that is what has happened. But yeah, it was a hard change. It was a hard change for sure.
Mm. It sure was. It sounds like that is a huge amount of change. I mean, like leaving a job is change, and
Mm,
is considered to be a really stressful
yeah.
event in our lives. So you went through a whole lot of that all at one
Mm,
time, and but even though I do describe change as my kryptonite, I'm a little bit excited because I kind of feel like the best part of everything is that you and I finally, after nearly 3 years of talking about it, are getting this pot off the ground, and we're working on something creative together and independently. And so I'm actually a bit excited and selfish for very, very selfish reasons, that you went through all of those change. It is important to recognize that I think we do get to a point in our lives where we do feel like we're jumping off a cliff, and sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith. And yeah, so
mm.
anyway, I think that's what we've done, and hopefully everybody loves what we create here for them.
Yes. Oh gosh. Well, we can only hope, Kathy. We can only hope. Now, we always ask our guests these questions, and so I want to ask you, because our podcast is called The Change, and part of the reference to being in midlife, perimenopause, etc. I want to know, what is your experience or
Mhm.
feeling right now towards going through the change, Kathy?
Ah, gosh, the change. I do think of it. I think it is nature's little um, joke, really. Mother Nature's little joke that there's a clash of hormones that happen in households. All around the world, where teenagers and mothers or tend to be coming together, and hormones are pouring into their lives, and hormones are flooding out of our lives.
Yeah.
But I actually went through a surgical or medical change, I guess you call it. I had a radical hysterectomy in 2017, and my ovaries, everything, the whole lot, was taken. So I went from being perimenopausal to menopausal overnight, in essence, although technically you're not menopausal until, you know, 12 months later. So 2018, I was menopausal, I guess. It was really funny because I've always had a very vexed relationship with those parts of my body. I had lifelong endometriosis and all of those things. So I'd been begging for my hysterectomy for years. And finally, my gynae said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Took the lot. And because there was some changes happening there as well. So took the lot because he knew that would be better for my mental health rather than do one operation and then potentially have to go back and do more. I remember being kind of almost excited that that was happening. And then when it actually happened, I woke up on a maternity ward after my surgery. And I just remember being devastated and thinking, oh my God, I can never have another baby.
Mm,
It was almost like that hadn't occurred to me. But I might add that at the time, my twins were 12 and my son was 7 or 16. So, like, there was no more babies coming. Like, that that shop shut a long time
Uh-huh.
before. So it was really kind of, but it felt monumental. It was kind of a line in the sand, and it was really, so it's been tricky. And since then, there's been a whole lot of health things that just kind of weren't there before, things that I'm starting to need to do health checks, more regular checking my blood pressure, checking my cholesterol, all of those things that kind of come with this time, which is very annoying. I find it very frustrating and very annoying, really.
Mm.
That's enough about me, really, to be honest. I want to know, well, we want to know, what are your feelings or experiences with the change?
Yes, look, it's a complex answer because I'm only 44, so I know, well, 45 in April, and I know I still have plenty of perimenopausal symptoms ahead of me, which is very exciting. But
Mhm.
at this stage, I feel very grateful to be alive. I've lost a close friend this year, and that
Mm.
was a very shocking and sad thing to go through. But also, it gives you that sense, of course, that it is a great privilege to simply be alive, at this age and stage. And I hope to live, for many more years. But I think when it comes to the change and this stage of life, the fact of it is we do live in an incredibly ageist society, and things have obviously got a lot better. People no longer talk about women being in their crone years as much as they certainly used to. And once we were past the kind of baby making stage, we were just cast aside, bunch of our witches with not much purpose, which is very, very ridiculous and sad, and obviously not relevant in these days. But we still very much value youth and beauty. And I think it is hard as a woman who has grown up in that patriarchal system where, young, beautiful women are the top of the tree and you are valued based on how you look and not what you have done or what you have to say. So there's a lot going on, isn't there, for all of us women? And we're all
Sure
kind of,
is.
yeah, trying to process this aging and these facts of life, which we will all go through as women. All of us will go through the menopause. So I think it's great when I hear good stories, positive stories of women going through it with hardly any symptoms. I'm like, yay, that's amazing. That's what I want
Mhm.
to hear. It's like, that's fantastic news to me. But yeah, I do find it hard to personally to age. I think as someone, I never felt particularly smart when I was younger at school. I wasn't particularly academic. I wasn't particularly beautiful either, but I felt like I could still put some makeup on and feel pretty good about myself. And these
Yeah.
days I don't feel that makeup is enough. And so I have in all honesty, have experimented with some Botox because and that's part of my fear of getting older and knowing what that means for me. So yeah, I find it hard actually. I find aging hard, and not just the physical aspect of aging. I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis 12 months ago, and that actually hasn't impacted me as much as I thought it would. I've still been able to go to the gym and do all the things that I
Sure.
I like to do, but it has been another sign that I'm aging, getting older, and with the hot flushes and the occasional night sweats. It's just it's just a different stage that I am still coming to terms with, Kathy, I guess is my answer, truthful answer. And I hope that even by doing this podcast with you and talking to all these different women, that will help me, to learn from other women. I think that's the best part about this age. I do think that aging aside and the physical, dilemmas, that women of this age are the most interesting. My friendships are so important at this age and stage, and I have a good life and I have had an interesting life thus far. And I'm kind of excited for what the next 10, 20 years plus has to offer. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's not all bad, is it? It's not all bad. It's just about, I think it's just, yeah, about being surrounded by interesting people that are also going through the same stuff and learning as we go.
It absolutely isn't all bad.
No.
And, there's lots of ways to do it, and there's no right way and there's no
Mm,
wrong way. I'm excited to, for what is going to come next. And
mm,
I'm excited for my third act. because,
Yes.
I no longer have the responsibility of children at school. So that's a bit exciting for me too.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge deal. And I think that this is what we're embracing with this podcast is our third act. And yeah, it's going to be a great first season talking to other women about theirs and their experiences and all of the changes that they have gone through, whether big, small, or otherwise. So I think that kind of brings us to a close for episode 1. And it's been a pleasure to get to know more about your changes, Cathy. And we will be talking much, much more.
We will be talking a lot more to some really inspirational women who have been through big, little, and in between change. And we will see how through them change can make us, break us, or shape us.
For sure. Thank you so much for listening to our first episode of The Change. We can't wait to talk more and bring you some fantastically interesting women talking about their changes. So we'll catch you soon.